Gaming Bolt presents 15 game features that developers regret implementing. Sometimes developers don't make the right decisions. This leads to backlash, criticism, petitions, endless rants on YouTube. You get the drift. However, sometimes there are decisions so damning that the developer itself has to come out and apologize. Let's take a look at 15 game features that developers regret implementing, along with some features that didn't pan out quite as expected. Arenas. World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft has seen its share of mistakes, not the least of which includes arenas just suddenly being introduced. Blizzard VP of Game Design Rob Pardo discussed as much with Engadget in 2013, noting that arenas, which are WoW's version of PvP, were just added without much consideration. With the amount of balance changes, class changes, and so on that it facilitated, Pardo said that Blizzard didn't see how much tuning and tweaking we'd have to do to balance it in that direction. Auction House. Diablo 3. As Joss Mosquera said in his GDC talk of 2015, Blizzard had the best intentions for the auction house. It was meant to make player trading on items more legit, lessening fraud and other issues. However, it quickly began to eat into the game's core looting aspects. The decision was made before Reaper of Souls released to shut down the auction house, and in his GDC 2015 talk, he talks about how regrettable an idea it was in the first place. Stingy RNG and difficulty. Diablo 3. Then again, Diablo 3 had a number of other issues. Too high of a difficulty, not enough quality of loot, stingy RNG that gave players items that they didn't want. Mosquera himself received a legendary quiver after hours of gameplay, and didn't even play a demon hunter. The list goes on. The decision was made to introduce a smarter loot system, thus rewarding players more fairly, and even if they should leave after having everything they want, at least they would do so in a happier fashion. Daily quest completion cap removal. World of Warcraft. The removal of a completion cap on daily quests is weird. Some fans were opposed to the idea while others embraced it. Nonetheless, lead designer Tom Chilton felt that it was one of the more regrettable decisions made for World of Warcraft, while speaking to Engadget in 2013. Boss fights. Deus Ex Human Revolution. Despite being a brilliant new start to the Deus Ex series, Human Revolution had one major knock against it: the boss fights. If you spec'd in anything other than combat, you were pretty much screwed against bosses. Gameplay director Francois Lapicus admitted to this in an interview with Games Radar in 2012, noting that the boss fights were included late into the design process. They were a big part of the game, and we should have put more work behind them. So sorry about that, he said. Human Revolution's director's cut would go on to correct this issue. Year 1 launch, sort of, Destiny. Let's be real. Destiny sucked at launch with its pitiful amount of content and repetitive grinding aspects. Bungie was extremely gung-ho about fixing things in The Taken King, which released in 2014. Despite director Luke Smith being his dodgy self at the time, he did note in an interview with Kotaku that the team had hidden a bunch of the fun parts of the game away. Then again, there were plenty of other instances of Bungie being remorseful, like how some enemies had too much health and so on, and how it wanted to listen to fans more. Destiny has since improved dramatically with the sequel out later this year. Single setting, storytelling, Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age 2 wasn't like the first game at all. It had one single setting, reused many of the areas, and it took a completely different approach to combat and storytelling. Hardcore fans were quick to despise the game, and BioWare outright admitted to Eurogamer we lost some fans as well. They were not pleased with some of the innovations and things we've done. We understand that, and we're listening. The overall series, Half-Life. Valve Corporation boss Gabe Newell has some interesting regrets. Speaking to DICE, Newell recalled his heavy involvement with the Half-Life series and resulted in it being hard for me to look at them as anything other than a series of things I regret. Though not outright stated as the reason Half-Life 3 was delayed, Newell discussed in other places how he's happier to look back on the series as an observer of sorts. Online passes, Electronic Arts. After much grief from consumers about the same, Electronic Arts made the smart decision to discontinue online passes in 2013. Later, in conversation with Polygon, then COO Peter Moore said that the company was very firm in removing online passes. I was at the meeting, it just wasn't resonating with the consumer, just wasn't consumer friendly. It was hard work, and it was as much work for the guy who would never trade his game in, even though we gave him some digital content, because you're punching numbers in. We just made a decision. Online Pass was more trouble to the consumer than it was worth. It was a mistake. The consumer's feedback was that this thing gets in the way of a good experience, so let's get rid of it. Everything. Final Fantasy XIV. We won't go into every single failure that defined the original Final Fantasy XIV, but in short, it was awful. Square Enix thankfully recognized this, restructuring the team overall. CEO Wada wrote on the official site 2 months after the game's launch that, "We deeply regret that this game has yet to achieve the level of enjoyment that Final Fantasy fans have come to expect from the franchise. For this, we offer our sincerest apologies." A free trial period was introduced, Yoshida took over as producer and director, and Final Fantasy XIV became A Realm Reborn, one of the finer MMORPGs currently available. Lackluster RPG mechanics. Five Nights at Freddy's World. Breaking news! When you release a game early without proper testing, it often isn't that good. Scott Cawthon faced that backlash from fans for Five Nights at Freddy's World, an RPG spin-off of the main series. Cawthon has a reputation for releasing games earlier than stated, but this game outright left features on the cutting room floor, like a stats sheet for characters, descriptions for abilities during battle, and so on. He apologized for this in an open later, pulling the game from sales before re-releasing it for free later. Abrupt ending. Trine 3. If you played Trine 3 after being a fan of the original 2 games, it no doubt felt like a departure. That too, one was really short. Not only that, but the sudden cliffhanger endings did no favors for the game's reputation. A Frozen Byte VP spoke to TechRaptor about this and noted that the cliffhanger story and the relative shortness of the game are valid criticisms, but ones we didn't realize would cause a disappointment in this scale. Sorry. Unfortunately, Frozen Byte moved on to games like Shot-In and Has-Been Heroes, both of which turned out less than successfully. Hyped features missing. Fable. Before Peter Molyneux gained a reputation for constantly failing to deliver on promises, he was, well, someone who didn't do it so frequently. Fable marked his first real lack of ability to deliver on numerous, overhyped features that were promised before. Molyneux himself apologized for the same on official forums in 2004 and also stated that, "I have come to realize that I should not talk about features too early on, so I'm considering not talking about the games as early as I do. This will mean that Lionhead games will not be known about as early as they are. But I think this is more of the industry standard." And well, the rest is history. Terrible launch. Assassin's Creed Unity. Remember that horribly buggy launch of Assassin's Creed Unity? Of course you do. The numerous bugs, performance issues, and overall terrible quality at launch was enough to sour players onto the next Assassin's Creed. That being said, Ubisoft did try to make amends. Ubisoft Montreal and Toronto CEO apologized for the game's launch, while the publisher made the first DLC, Dead Kings, free for all. And Season Pass owners had a choice of one free Ubisoft title. Over time, Ubisoft took to minimizing the exposure of microtransactions in the game among other fixes. Always online DRM, SimCity. Finally, we come to one of the most horrible launches of all time, SimCity, released in March of 2013, and always online. Why always online? Well, you'd have to ask EA that question, which many paying customers did. The servers immediately tanked, and that's not counting all of the other issues with microtransactions and whatnot. Maxis senior VP, Lucy Bradshaw, did say that the company was dedicated to fixing things. The developer also outright stated on Twitter that EA does not force design on us. We own it. We are working 24/7 to fix it, and we are making progress. And once again, the rest is history, but at least SimCity eventually got offline play. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Bolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.